Wait, what are you saying? Is this confirmed information? Trump is doing away with the H-1B lottery system. Are you sure? What are we gonna do, man? Stop right there. Do you have plans to go and study in the US with the hope of eventually settling down? If affirmative, I have some big news for you. I recently made a short about this on YouTube, which I also posted on Instagram, but I wanted to expound on this and talk about this a little bit more on detail in a long length video. And well, the big news here is that the H-1B system, which has always traditionally been the golden ticket to actually extending your stay in the US and working there for an extended period of time before you hopefully get a green card, is getting completely revamped now. What does that mean? I will be breaking that down in this video right here, right now. Before we get into the intricacies of what the new H-1B system is like, it might be of merit for us to kind of go through what the earlier system was like. So in the earlier system, if you go to the US, your master's, you're eligible to work for a period of 1 year on your OPT, which is known as the optional practical training, with the main purpose of being able to translate what you've done in the classroom in the workplace as well. If you have a STEM designated degree, that means that OPT can be extended for another 2 years, which means that you get a total of 3 years to work in the US. And in the meanwhile, what your company rather can do is apply for an H-1B visa, which is essentially a work permit which allows you to stay in the US for another 3 years, which means that on the completion of your 3 years of OPT, you get another 3 years to work in the US. And there is a limit to how many times you can get the H-1B visa, which I have spoken about in an earlier video. So you get a total of 6 years on an H-1B visa. It is a make it or break it situation in terms of getting a green card during that time, which your employer could sponsor for you. But this video is not really about the green card. I could perhaps make a video for that another day. This is strictly about the H-1B, which, like I said, has been the golden ticket for international students to make it in the US and fulfill their American dream. So the old structure was such that the US would allot 85,000 H-1B visas for employees who would have a certain specialized set of skills which would allow companies to hire them. These employees would obviously be non-citizens of the United States of America. And what would happen is that out of these 85,000 visas that would be granted, 20,000 would be reserved exclusively for students who've done a master's and above. And of course, this is the United States of America. We're talking about the entire world dreams of making it big here, big there in the States. So obviously you get number of applications for these H-1B visas, that is the demand for the visas far outstrip the supply of the same. So after they allot the 85,000 visas based on merit, what they do is the rest of the applications that are granted is done on a lottery system. Translation, your chance of getting an H-1B visa is pretty much based on your fortune. It has nothing to do with your capabilities, the brand prestige of your university, or even the quality of your work ex in your OPT program. It solely and wholly depends on your fortune. Now, this is what the Trump administration is looking to move away from, because now the proposal is the USCIS has proposed moving away from the lottery-based system to a wage-based system, wherein employees with higher wages will have a better chance of getting an H-1B visa. What does that essentially mean? It means that if there is one H-1B visa which is currently vacant, and US officials have the option of choosing someone who's working on a 75,000 yearly salary in the US as opposed to someone who's earning 130K, they will go with the latter simply because he is earning a higher wage. That is what the new proposed system is. Now the question is, why is there so much panic which is reverberating all across the international student community? Well, here's the thing. When you go on a master's to the US and you are looking for an entry-level job, most fields will not give you a salary which is over 100K. No matter how good of a university you go to, chances are that your salary is going to be below 100K if you're going for a master's program. Going for an MBA might be a different situation altogether, but for a master's, that's the ballpark figure of what you can expect after a master's, even in a good job market, would be about 70 to 80K on an average, based on my previous research. So what that means is that these entry-level grads stand no chance against people who are more experienced and are applying for the H-1B as well, which means student who's going to the US for a master's with the hope of settling there is going to find it a lot harder to get a job as compared to what he or she did before. So does this mean that the American dream is shattered for good? Make no mistake about it, that is not true. The game is still pretty much the same. The only difference is how you play it. And now this video will kind of try to explain how you can go about navigating this miry path in your attempt to fulfill some of the biggest academic and professional dreams that you may have. According to official US data, there were about 193,000 H-1B visas which were issued to Indians for the fiscal year 2023, and the number rose to about 200K in the following fiscal year. I will be linking the article from where I got this data in the comment section below, and for you to cross check and verify, because obviously the veracity of and authenticity of information is key. But that is the outlook here, which means that about we can assume that about 220K visas is what is issued every single year. And of course, we've already covered this in the channel before. The number of applicants for a master's or even for an undergrad program in terms of international student is way beyond that number, just from the Indian community itself. And now also there is news that unless there is some huge legal roadblock for the same, this new visa system is expected to be in effect for the year 2027. So in this coming year, for 2026, from what I understand, the lottery-based system is set to continue, but after that it's going to be completely on a wage-based system. Now, before I expound on how you can navigate this murky situation that international students currently find themselves in, let's talk about the general sentiment which surrounds this new decision. There are certain students, international students included, who are actually happy with respect to this new decision, simply because what happens in the US is a lot of students, a lot of graduates end up getting jobs which are jobs just on paper. There are consultancies which start up fake companies and put them on their payroll so as to enable them to stay in the US for longer. And they're also taking up an H-1B visa, which means that someone who's actually more capable than them in terms of securing a job would be left without a visa. So for such individuals who believe that they can actually get a job based on their meritocracy, this can actually be looked at as a blessing in disguise. So there is some positive sentiment even in the international student community here, in case you want to look at it positively and look at it as a glass half full rather than half empty. And that's how some students are looking at it. But of course, a lot of students have concerns, because when you look at the job market, it is unfair to have an impressionistic wage structure for every industry. There are certain industries which naturally offer higher wages, that's tech, data science, cyber technology, finance, versus others which may not offer as salaries as high as those, even in advanced roles. So for what I'm trying to say is that if you want to compare someone who is not from the tech sector or any of those industries that I spoke about, he may be experienced and may be earning a lot higher than what an entry-level employee in that same sector is earning. But that payment, let's say that's 120K, might be the entry-level wage that someone in the tech industry is getting. So there is talk about how it is unfair to have an impressionistic wage structure, and it should be curated, and the wage structure should actually be curated as per the sectors, which I think is fair. But we'll have to wait and watch to see whether this is actually going to be implemented or not. Okay, that's so. All of this sounds like a little bit of a headache, doesn't it? Because I've been there. I've been as an international student who freshly graduated with no work experience in a difficult job market. I know that people are willing to take jobs for as low as 50-60K at this point of time. But with this new structure that's going to make entry-level jobs a lot more difficult, a lot more convoluted. But I've had enough with the gloom and doom. So let's talk about some positive news, shall we? So I'm going to break this down to you in a very simple and effective manner, so that you don't have to go down a rabbit hole to kind of understand how you can navigate through this difficult path. And before I break that down, it's also important to understand that this new H-1B revamp, which is being proposed at this point, is not just for entry-level students. That is for students who are looking to do a master's in the US, but this is also for people who are already on their OPT in the US, because in case they want to stay back for an H1, this affects them as well. So now how do we extricate ourselves from this mess? First thing you can do is, well, I've already touched upon this in the video previously. Look for if the US is specifically a country that you're looking to go, and you don't have a preference for a specific sector, and it's just the experience of going abroad that you're looking at. Well, I would suggest looking at master's programs and jobs in the fields of tech, AI, cybersecurity, finance, because like I mentioned earlier, even entry level roles in these fields are a lot higher than most other fields. The median salary that an entry level grad gets in these fields as opposed to the others is a lot higher and increases your chance of being picked up in the lottery. Second thing you can do is, well, not everyone is keen on wanting to get into one of those fields. Heck, I'm personally not interested in any of those fields myself. So what would a student like me do? Second thing that you can do is, well, your first job is not your final job. If you're doing this is actually a lot more pertinent if you're doing a STEM designated degree, but can also be used for non-STEM designated degrees as well. You get your first job, and even if your first job is if the wage is a little on the lower side, you make sure that in those 3 years, if you have a STEM designated degree, you make sufficient jumps and you negotiate with a strong arm in ensuring that you actually get a wage hike. Now, it's difficult to get a wage hike within the same company, especially when you are a fresher. So jumping to another company is something some of my known associates in the US are doing. That ensures that by the time your H-1B application comes around, your wage is a lot higher than what it was when you first picked up the job. So that is another way to navigate it. Now, some might argue that this is not exactly the safest option, given that it is extremely difficult to get a job in the US job market right now. Getting multiple will pose an even bigger challenge. I am cognizant of this, but what I am also cognizant of is that companies in the US highly value work experience. So even if you've gotten 1 year of work experience elsewhere, I do believe that you have a much better chance of securing another job. And like I said, people I personally know have done this already in the past 1 or 2 years. Again, what you can also do is, while I did say that the H-1B is the golden ticket, it is not the only ticket when it comes to getting when it comes to actually settling down in the US and staying there for an extended period of time. There are other visas that you can look at, such as the O1 visa. The O1 visa is actually a visa. I'm just going to tell you in a nutshell what the O1 visa is. I can probably make a detailed video on that some other day, but an O1 visa is essentially a visa that is granted to international students who have demonstrated to be exceptional individuals in the US on their student visa. And this usually is reserved, from what I know, again, and I do know of one person who has been granted this visa. He graduated from Harvard University. Again, it's no small feat to get into Harvard University, but my point is that if you get into a top university, you have other avenues open in terms of looking at alternate routes rather than just the H-1B visa, which arguably makes getting into a top tier university even more important than it ever was before. You can also look at L1 transfers if you're working for a multinational company and the multinational company thinks that you are capable, and if the multinational company thinks that you're a right fit for the US market, they might transfer you to the US on an L1 visa. That is again an alternate route, but it's not here's the thing about the L1 visa is that it's not completely in your hands, because it's as per the company's discretion in terms of who gets to go, but it is nonetheless another option that is open for you. And now the last thing that you can do here is, and this is where things get real, you have to kind of assess whether the US is truly your destination. The US is where you eventually see yourself in the long term, because the truth is that it is getting a lot harder for immigration has notoriously been difficult in the US, and it's only getting harder, and at least for the short term it looks the opportunity for easier immigration reforms look very bleak at this point. So look at alternate countries. There are other countries that you can be exploring, countries like Australia, Germany, Canada. Now, India has recently improved relations with Canada, so that does open up new doors for a lot of Indians as well. But even so, for the international community that's watching this channel and watching this video, Canada is definitely a great option and also offers relatively easier immigration standards as compared to the US. And of course, there are a plethora of other countries that you can explore. And you know what? I'm actually going to be making a video very soon talking about what countries you can be targeting other than the US, now that the US is not the end game. Well, if I had the druthers, I would pick going to the US every single time. But that's a very subjective opinion. I have my personal reasons for doing that. And but I do believe that I come from a place of privilege that not everyone does. So it's important to keep your options open at this point of time, because the US is really pulling up their immigration reforms here. Because even for tourist visas, just today, as a matter of fact, as of 3rd of September, I just read an article which said they're doing away with the entire Dropbox facility, which essentially means that people who already have B1 visas, the tourist visas, do not need to line up for an interview, and can just drop their passports and they'll get their visas. That actually, as a matter of fact, that happened to me when I had a tourist visa, and I did not have to give an interview for the student visa, for the F1 visa, simply because I already had a tourist visa. They're ending that now, which also means that there are going to be much longer lines in the consulates and a lot harder to get visas in general to the US. So the US, unless you really have your heart set on it, is probably not the best option to go to in terms of how the immigration reforms are looking at. But again, we don't know what the future holds. So if you can probably delay your foreign education, if it's not something that you must get off your plate at this point, you can probably delay it and see how things go in the US. Or like I said, you can pick any of those alternate routes that I spoke about in this video. So the playing field just got a lot harder. It was never easy to begin with, but it's gotten a lot harder now. But like I said, there is a way to navigate it and to face such roadblocks. Remember that you're not alone in this. The US is still a highly sought after destination when it comes to foreign studies. So hang in there, and we'll wait and watch to see what happens. So now tell me, now that you have a decent idea of what the immigration reforms are looking at, of course, now this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's going to be a lot that's going to be coming up, and we can discuss that in the comment section below. Speaking of the comment section, do let me know, are you still considering the US as a study abroad option? Is your heart still set on the American dream as it is with someone like me, or are you open to exploring other options after you understand how convoluted the path has now become? And of course, if you found this video useful, please leave me one of these. It helps with the algorithm of the channel, guys. And do share it with your circles, promulgate it to your circles, so that we can build a community where we can look out for each other. Remember that this channel is cloud free. I am here to give you real talk only. Maybe not talk that you want to hear, but talk that you do need to hear. So thank you so much for watching, and until next time, I shall see you very, very soon. Take care. Stay safe.